In this video, I want to discuss this question. It's the same question as in the previous case, okay, and I'm just going to rewrite some of the information here. But we calculated in the previous video the NPV of the borrow to buy decision. So I have the NPV of borrow to buy, and the NPV of borrow to buy was 3,505.08 negative. The NPV of the lease decision was 3,631 negative, which made leasing worse than borrowing to buy. In this video, the question, if you didn't notice, the question actually changed. Now the question is, what is the lease payment that would make the firm indifferent between leasing or buying? So that's basically looking for an indifference point. This is not covered in the textbook, so the only practice questions you'll get will be from me, and I think this is somewhat difficult material for a lot of students. The first thing to realize is I'll just take the NPV and I'll put them as positive number. We could put them both as negative number. It wouldn't really change much, right? But I'll take the NPV of the lease decision and I'll minus the NPV of the borrow to buy decision. And we can find that the lease decision is 95.23 below the borrow decision, right? We need to get this number here would need to be 95.23 higher in order to be indifferent between these two decisions. And that number is important. So I'll just write it as difference here. And unfortunately, we don't have a choice here, but to do a little bit of algebra. We can actually simplify the algebra a little bit by using our calculator correctly, but that's what we're going to need to do. Okay, so what we want to think about is we want to think about $1 in lease payment, right? $1 in lease payment. We want to know how much does that generate? In NPV. So whenever we make $1 in lease payment, how much is that going to create in NPV? Okay, well, it's actually pretty straightforward. There are two things that happens when we pay $1 in lease payment. The first thing that happens is the lease payment and the second thing that happens is the tax shield. Okay, and this is what we can use to try to think about where we can find that $95.23 from. Okay, first thing is we can calculate, right, $1 in lease payments. What does it generate in NPV? Okay, we look at the lease payment first. So our lease payments, in this case, it's a lease for 5 years. Our interest rate that we wanted to use in this case, again, is the after-tax cost of debt. The cost of debt is 10%, the tax rate is 40%, so the after-tax cost of debt is 6%. It's 1 payments per year and it's compounded yearly. We want to find the PV, okay, of $1 in lease payment. Okay. So I'll just store this as 1 here so we can remember this number. I'll write STO1 here so we can remember for later. Okay, then I have in my lease payments, the lease payments will be for 5 years. We want to know the NPV that we get from $1 of payment, so I put 1 as my payment. The interest rate is 6%. Do not forget, like I did in the previous video, to put BGN on because lease payments are at the beginning of the period, and we can compute our PV. And we find that the PV, right, of $1 in lease payment is $4.47. So anytime our lease payments go up by $1, we will get an NPV that goes down by 4.47. Okay, but that's not the only cash flow that's generated by $1 more in lease payment. We also get the tax shield. So then we can find the NPV for $1 of tax shield. These numbers will all be the same. So the N, the interest rate, the P over Y will all be the same. But now the payments, right, the P and T, every time I generate $1 in lease payment, how many dollars will I generate at the end of the year in tax shield? Well, I pay $1 more and I'll get a 40% discount, right, on my tax. So 40% of that will be a tax shield. So I'm going to get 40 cents. Every time I have $1 more in lease payment, I'll get 40 cents in tax shield. That tax shield will be paid at the end of the year, and it will be paid for 5 years. I'll get it for 5 years in a row. So I can calculate the PV of the tax shield on $1 in lease payment. So I'm just going to store this number as 2, STO2. Okay, N is already 5, the interest rate is already 6, P over Y, C over Y is already 1. Okay, our payments are 0.4. And we do not want to be in BGN mode, so I make sure to change that. Then I can compute the PV, and we get a PV of 1.68. I'll just stop there. I won't write all the decimals, but you should definitely use all the decimals in your calculation because on the D12, that's how it will work, right? So you should keep all the decimals just like I do. I just make sure they're all positive because I don't really want to have some negative and some positive number. I can just think about the signs afterwards. Okay, the next thing I need to do, $1 in lease payment means that I'm going to lose 4.47 in NPV because that's the present value of what these payments will be worth. But it also means I'm going to get 1.68 in tax shield. So if I take 4.47, which I stored under 2, and I minus 1.68, what I stored under 3, I get that each $1 in lease payment increase or decrease my NPV by 2.78, right? Whenever I get $1 more in lease payment, I'm going to lose $2.78 in today's value, okay? And we want that the difference, we want that all of these, so we need to reduce our lease payment enough so that it's going to cover 95.23. Okay, so what I can do is I take my difference between these two and I can divide it by how much my NPV goes down every time I have $1 more in lease payment. Okay, so if I take this number and I divide it by our difference, I think I made a mistake here. Let me just recalculate that. Oh yes, I did this divided by 95. That was not a good idea. Store that as 4. So I want to do this number divided by this number, right? That's what I said we should do. And I get 34.25. So this means my lease payments need to go down by 34.25. Okay? Try to think about it. Each $1 in lease payment, each time my lease payment goes down by $1, I generate plus 2.78 in NPV, right? So if my lease payment goes down by $1, I get 2.78 more in NPV. Okay, but I want this to be 95.23. So if I take 2.78 and I multiply it by 34.25. So if I decrease my payments 34.25 times by $1, and I multiply it by the NPV that will generate, it's going to give me 95.23. Now, the numbers are not necessarily rounded here, but if I use these same rounded numbers, right, I get 95.23. So if I want this NPV to go up by 95.23, and each dollars makes it go up, that that my lease payments go down by makes it go up by 2.78, then I need to do that 34.25 times. Okay, so the answer here is, so the question was what lease payment would make the firm indifferent. I just said my lease payment need to go down by 34.25. So if I take my initial lease payments, 1,295, and I minus 34.25, I find what my new lease payments should be. And this is our final answer, right? I'm not going to write it down, but the final answer is the new lease payments. If we want to be indifferent between the borrow to buy and the lease decision, the lease payment need to be 1,060.75. Okay, I'm not going to do it here because I think you have all the tools to do it, but calculate the NPV of the lease decision with these payments instead of these payments. If you do that, you will find 3,505.08. I think you won't actually find it because this payment is rounded a little bit. I think the final decision arrived to 3,505.07, right? But you'll find that basically these two NPV become the same if the lease payment is this instead of this. Okay, so try it just to make sure you understood the previous videos. Okay, thank you very much.